So let's get into today's subject. And today we're going to be talking about the Solutions Catalogue. And I think it's really important we talk about what the Solutions Catalogue is and how it works. But the PDS Solutions Catalogue was originated during the National Enabling Programme, and we created it based on the feedback from you in the forces about how you needed a way to share what you were working on, avoid duplication of effort, and share the solutions that were being developed locally beyond the force boundaries. Remember at that time when we created this, we were mid-COVID, every force was facing challenges around desk booking, social distancing, and we were of course rolling out the 365 solutions platform across all the forces. So it meant that why did we need to create 43 different versions of the same product to do the same problem using the same technologies? And that's the point. The rollout of 365 has meant we've got a shared common core technology platform and importantly the design, so we're fairly confident that things can work on it across all those platforms. So what is the Solutions Catalogue? The Solutions Catalogue itself is a restricted site. It's only available to guests of the Police Digital Service who are members of the police user community. So you have to be a guest to get to the actual detail. But earlier this year, we published it on the PDS website in a version that was public facing. So there's no restricted information in there. The idea was to help other colleagues who perhaps didn't have access currently to the Solutions Catalogue to be able to see what was there, request access, and to be able to help drive change in their area of business and their force. And of course it's also made sure that suppliers out there could know what we'd already got and perhaps could focus on helping us with solutions for things that we hadn't got a solution for at the time. And we did see a massive increase in usage of the app, of the Solutions Catalogue, and it fits in with our aim of empowering the users to use the tech to shape the way that technology is used. Now, it is a place to share, for example, and it's a great example for policing, by policing, with policing. The vast majority of the solutions have been submitted by colleagues in forces, so it's really important you know how to access it. So I'm going to pop the website up and take you through that as we go along on the journey. So there's three core ways to get into it. The PDS website, or if you're already a guest, you'll be able to get into it through the Enabling Centre and straight into the Solutions Catalogue. And we have links from the Force Collaboration channel. And it's really important we do think about the Force Collaboration channel. So if you head over to the website, and I'll pop the live website up so you can see it in action. So if you head over to Delivery and Programs, and it's the top option there is the Solutions Catalogue. Now what you're seeing here is the publicly accessible version of the catalogue, and you can see all the apps that are in there, and we will spend a little bit more time in a second going through what's in there. And then if you are already a guest member, you'll just be able to click download the solution and you'll be jumped straight into the Solutions Catalogue, usually right to the app where it actually sits. However, if you're not a guest at the moment, you will need to become a guest. So you just click at the button here that starts a simplified form to ask you for a few details, and then we're able to give you access and to make you a guest of the PDS, and that will give you not only access to the Solutions Catalogue, but importantly the Force Collaboration channel, which is where we want you to start talking about what you're trying to develop, what you're using, and how it does work. So really simple way to get in there. So if I head straight into the Enabling Centre, and again, if you want to get to it through the Enabling Centre, just go into the catalogue and you can see it's all sitting in here ready to go. So before I go into the detail, I'm going to ask Russ to pick up on one of the most downloaded apps that we've got in there that came from the Met. So it's the MyCJ Power App. And Russ, could you take us through what you think that app does?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dave. Hello, everybody. I'm Russ, one of the business engagement managers for the PDS. I'm going to talk to you about the MyCJ app, which is actually one of the most downloaded apps we have from the Solutions Catalogue, developed by colleagues in the Met. I think I can speak from experience of serving police officers since joining the PDS and seeing that this app existed. It unfortunately didn't exist when I was still serving. And from both being a PC and also being an ERO role, it would have been very, very useful for me to have access to a tool like this when it comes to case file completion. As we all know, case file completion is key to obtaining successful judicial outcomes for the victims of crime. It's a key thing for doing what's right for the victim at the end of unfortunate situations that they may be subjected to. So it's something that both historically and during some current appeal reports has been highlighted as an area that requires improvement for some forces. It's obtaining these judicial outcomes what, as officers, we all strive to do, and the accuracy of case file completion is a major part of why sometimes this doesn't happen. This app obviously goes to fix that with it bridges the gap between officer training and experience of case file completion, because it can be quite varied across the country, and throughout my 20 years in the police, I witnessed several different guides as to how to complete case files as it evolved throughout changes and various bits of legislation changes. This app, I'll go on to explain in a bit while how it would cover all of that aspect as well. So it acts as an aid memoir, training guide, and a guide to like a universal case file completion, which would make it quite nice across the country if everything's pretty much aligned. So it improves case file accuracy, improves officers' knowledge and training, improves uniformity of case file completion across all forces, improves force performance for correct judicial outcomes. The most important one, it improves victim experience and also confidence in policing at the end of it. Now, as we all know, there's constant changes in case file completion, which more regularly in terms of the forms required, the layout, the legislation changes. But this app, because it's the way it's set up, it's very, very easy to change that to make it instantaneous across any user, that they get those updates straight away. It runs through SharePoint lists and is built within Power Apps. So hence the easiness that updates can be uploaded. And within the app itself, there's video functions which are hard coded, which means that you don't have to constantly download the videos to watch them. It's something that can be done on an ad hoc basis without having the need to download each time. All of this easiness of change, and it prevents the long drawn out training processes when change is brought into case file completion. Sometimes there'll be a small change that could take several months to implement. Well, it can be done instantaneously across this app. So the app itself is split into covers two main questions of an ask here from an officer: is what case file build do I actually need, and what goes in my case papers? They're the two questions it goes to answer on that. And to cover these questions, the actual app itself is split into two sections. The first one is a guide to all the forms that are currently being used in all the case files. And the second one is a guide to case file completion for each different type of application you're going for, whether it's a pre or post charge file on there. For the forms section, it goes really, really back to basics of day one training on this. It's what the document is, what each section of the form does, guide to completion of each form, guide to wording for the certain sections of forms that require set formatted structure of wording, which has been approved to gold standard by the MPCC. And alongside that, the video guides there for completing each one of these forms. So it really does enhance that knowledge and promote the national standard of case file completion. The case files themselves, the second section is split into pre and post charge, and again covers what is needed for each type of file. It's almost like a virtual assistant for officers to complete the case files as they go along. It's got a series of drop-down boxes, questions and answers that direct an officer to the correct option, and then highlights the mandatory forms in green, and then mandatory based on certain conditions being met in blue. You can see that on the screen there. It's very, very simple to follow what is actually required at the time. The blue ones will turn green depending on what you've ticked on the answers, if a particular factor has been hit to make that mandatory form as well. There is a full webinar from the person that developed the app available on the catalogue. I think it's dated the 19th of May 2021. There will be a link to all of this that's going to be shared. But I would say anybody interested in the app, go to that video. It goes through in far more detail. It shows you a working file going through, and it is a brilliant example of a process that is very complex, but obviously requires very, very accurate results from it. And it breaks it down into the element where you can't possibly go wrong on this particular app. So very, very good, and I can understand why it's one of the most downloaded ones on the catalogue.
That's great, thanks, Russ. And yeah, was an app developed by Frontline for the Frontline, and it's working really well. We'll talk about what you need to do to be able to implement an app and how we can collaborate and support each other on that in a second. But one of the most topical subjects at the moment is obviously policing is around burglary, and we've all seen the announcement around the change of policy in terms of the approach for burglary. So, Rich, you've been working with Doug over at Humberside in the MPCC over the Burglary Power app. Do you want to give a quick overview of how where that sits?
Yeah, I think Dave, fundamentally it's worthwhile painting the picture of where we are nationally in terms of burglary investigation. I think this app is probably most pertinent now because it's important strategically and politically. So I'm just going to run through that background and why we need an app of this nature, and why Doug and his team progressed with this in conjunction with TSCI. So essentially, policing has faced a number of challenges over the last decade, and the investigation of burglary is almost in a perfect storm, if you like. We all know that over the last 10 years, austerity has forced chiefs to make some really difficult decisions about deployment of their ever-increasing limited resources. And that's resulted in a more move of resources away from high volume crime like burglary to target areas of serious threat, risk and harm. We had a surge of recruitment in the 90s, and that resulted in a large number of staff exiting from policing with significant experience over the last few years, of which I'm one of, actually. And without doubt, investigation of crime has become significantly more complex, as all crime investigation has been. And particularly areas around disclosure has been a real challenge. And then probably the fourth factor is we've got 20,000 staff coming into the organisation over the last 3 years. We've brought a large number of new faces into policing, which have flooded the first responder roles. And that's meant greater resilience at the front line. But what it's also meant is there's knowledge gaps in investigation. So we have seen over the last few years significant declines in detection rates for domestic burglary, running as low as 5% in some forces, and the public rightly won't tolerate that. So we have seen the tide turn fairly recently. Several forces have announced that all domestic burglaries will be attended by police officers. Most recently, obviously, Mr. House announcing the strategy on his appointment as Met Commander, and that's been coincided with the direction from the Home Secretary driving this nationally. But the issue is still about inexperience on the front line, and this is where the TSCI Burglary app can make a real difference. Developed in partnership with Doug Blackwood from Humberside Police and supported by MPCC lead for acquisitive crime Amanda Blakeman. And the app, which Dave has been sort of flicking up there on screen, really has a couple of different key functions, and I'm not going to go into too much detail around the specific app at the moment, but there are two really important elements to this. One is the aid memoir to support staff in their actions at the scene, and there are a couple of key areas here. One is around target hardening advice for the victim. So they've been subject of a particularly obnoxious offence, and we want our staff to ensure that that doesn't happen again, and have the tools available to them to ensure that the victim is protected from further offences. So that target hardening advice is sat within the application. We also want to make sure that our staff are investigating in line with local force policies and national force policies, so there's an investigative checklist in there. But also it prompts officers to complete standard actions, and again it makes sure that some of our junior, more inexperienced staff are following some core guidelines and making sure we really exploit some of the potential almost golden hour principles that we will be looking at when we're investigating a burglary. The bespoke tool allows the recording of the offence as well, and that's a second element of that. And again, it's really using national standards for app development developed by PDS, those national standards. Officers at the front line can record quickly and simply data, and then cut and paste that information and data into a niche occurrence. therefore improving data quality and consistency around the specific offence of burglary. And that will hopefully deliver greater potential to detect further offences through that target hardening, and detect the specific offence under investigation. So really tackling those two core elements that we really want our frontline staff to nail home. At the moment, the app doesn't offer integration into an RMS, but there is work afoot, and it is anticipated in the next few weeks the app will integrate into the niche RMS and in a further release. And work is underway to develop the integration with NEC so that forces using Connect and Athena will have access to that, but we haven't got any timelines on that. But of course, those developments will be built into further improvements on the solution catalogue. PDS have worked with Humberside and in particular with Teskey to ensure that the intellectual property is not retained by Teskey, so that it can be shared with the whole of policing, so it's at no cost to the force downloading the solution. And again, as Russ has mentioned on MyCJ, we have done a webinar and workshop with Teskey and Humberside on the solution, so it goes into real detail around the power app that is provided, but it is really very straightforward, very simple. Use of mandated fields where relevant, and use of AD to pull in officers' details, all the things you would expect from a modern authenticating application. I think that's great.
Thanks, Richard. And I'm going to come to Tom next, because we've got another app we want to show you today, which is probably one of those simple apps that we've built, because it is. But one of the things we wanted to talk about is how we make sure things are suitable and up to date. Now, the one with the Teskey one that we've just said, you can see that it was updated shortly after it going live. But Tom, first of all, how do you make sure that the apps are suitable, and what assurance can forces have? And perhaps talk through what a force would need to do to actually get these apps deployed.
Yeah, so I guess I want to first of all start off that just by sort of putting a slight caveat on the Solution Centre. When it was created as part of the NEP, it was really there to try and streamline getting forces to leverage some of these capabilities and give them almost a leg up in terms of how do we get a force using the Office 365 services to their full potential. So the idea of the solution catalogue is to provide forces with a working model of an application that they can then either amend locally to meet local requirements, or in turn just take it as is off the shelf. But with that, there is a responsibility on the force to ensure that that application is supported and that they have an in-life, if you like, support model, an update model for that. As we've seen with everything within Office 365, it is an evergreen environment, so there will be changes to that service, and some of those changes may impact how those applications operate. What we will do from a PDS point of view is we will test the deployment, make sure that it works out of the the information that's provided by the developing force, the documentation and those types of things. So it should be straightforward to deploy it locally. But we don't do a full end-to-end user test and all of those types of things to make sure that the application is actually addressing everything that it was in, maybe made out to. What we can also do is provide some support around the deployment. I've spoken with a number of forces around these to try and build some of that understanding. But what I would say is that forces do need to have an understanding of the Power Platform, some knowledge within supporting the Power Platform, just to make sure that there is a document that I'm just finishing off in terms of some standards around the deployment of applications, some coding standards, those sorts of things that will make it easier for somebody to decipher an application that is developed by somebody else, also some guidance on how to package an application and what additional detail is needed to make sure that that solution can be really easily picked up by another. And then lastly, also looking at a template for a Power App. That way, you know, menus and controls will look similar across applications that leverage it. We've got the event tomorrow in Manchester, and you know, I'll be you know, we're looking to sort of discuss some of those a little bit, but also available to discuss any of this in more detail. But I think just on a last step around the apps themselves is, although these are developed within another force, when you deploy them into your solution, ultimately they do become your application. You can amend them, you can change them and tweak them, and it is your data that is going to be running within them. So making sure that you've got that support model, and then use the either the force collaboration or the solution catalog teams to ask questions and try and gain some support. I guess an ask is if you identify an issue with it, let us know. And as you've seen with the burglary app, we can make amendments to those and we can update it. So anyone who takes it in the future, they will have a better experience.
That's great, thanks, Tom. And Richard and I were on a call just less than an hour ago talking to a force who's going to do a webinar for us in a few weeks' time. And we're talking about the whole process is that if we can share what we're all doing and the problems we have, the originating force might get a better product as well out of this. And there's no problem with it being an iterative approach to designing these and making them working. You're always getting the minimum viable product when you get to any solution out of the box. And I think that's one of the points we want to come to is what is it? What's the challenge and opportunity for you guys in forces around the solutions catalog right now? And you know, what should you do when you're thinking about developing a solution? And one of the first things, of course, is before you start the development of a solution, is there already something there that will do 80, 90 or even 100% of what you're trying to achieve? So as Tom mentioned, would it work out of the box, just need pointing at the right data sets? Is it a framework or something that you can adapt locally and perhaps build a building block as part of another wider solution? Or is it a foundation stone to integrate into further development? Could you look at how the problem's been solved for one problem and use that as a way of inspiring you and guiding you to develop another solution based on the same sort of workflows and approach and data sharing approach? So think about it as what's the logic and processes, and importantly, why did they approach it that way? Is there something you could learn in terms of they tried something and didn't work? And this is where the force collaboration channel really comes into it. If you've got a problem, pop a line into the force collaboration channel saying, I'm about to solve this problem, how do I go about it? Has anybody got any ideas? And of course, if you, as Tom just mentioned, if you do spot an issue, chances are somebody else is experiencing the issue. They may already have found the solution to it, and if we can share them across there, all the better, and the effort that we're saving is absolutely huge. I'm just going to show you one of the simplest apps that we've got, and this is one that could benefit almost any force at all. It's just an acronym finder. You know, think about the amount of new people that are coming into policing. How hard is it to find things? And this is nothing more than a SharePoint list with a user interface. But again, you can just put in here what you think you're looking for, and it will look it up and add it in. And again, we've empowered on for our instance that any user can add an acronym if they don't find it. So again, that collaboration approach is just to building that data in here, and it's such a simple app. It's so simple. I developed it, and I'm not a techie like Tom. I don't understand the technology that underpins this, but I know it works, and it was such a simple thing to do. So you've got in the solutions catalog applications that range from that very simple information assurance, giving you a bit of information on what's on there, right the way through to complex things like we've got with the guest invitation one, the football policing one that's going to be up there very, very soon, Marek, user mapping, desk booking apps. So we've got a new well-being vehicle booking app that's going to be live on the website shortly. It's already in the solutions catalog. So all these solutions are sitting there ready for you to use and to inspire you. And what we want you to do is share back what you picked up on here. You know, you got your mobile phone asset tracker, managing files one, And we do try and do webinars with them to make sure that people can benefit from them and understand what's available to you. But we're about to drop another 5 or 6 in the next couple of weeks into this solutions catalogue, taking it to over 40. So there's absolutely huge opportunity for you to be able to use these solutions. Just going to a couple of the questions that have been coming in here. Anne-Marie's asking about where should she get the link to that. There's a link at the top of the chat to the download page, or we'll put it on screen for the recording. Of course, just head over to the PDS website. You'll be able to access it straight from there. Richard and Tom, perhaps, what sort of things should people do in terms of getting guidance before they start empowering on a Power App?
I think there is a huge amount of resources out there on the internet. There's, as well as the Microsoft training, and there's a lot of Microsoft free training. There are some great, and in Microsoft terms, MVPs who are sort of identified as sort of experts. They're not Microsoft employees, but they put a huge amount of time in. What I'll do is I'll put a couple of links into the chat in a second, but they are great resources. And ultimately, you know, you can't really break much. All of your data is safe. You're using SharePoint lists, everything. You know, if you were to delete a record, it goes into the recycle bin and it can be recovered. Just almost boot yourself a little play environment, you know, a sample SharePoint list, and actually just start to look at what is possible. It is completely possible to create a SharePoint list, and within a couple of button clicks, it will automatically create your Power App with no code requirements whatsoever. And then you can use that to sort of have a look what's underneath the you know, the workings and understand how Power Apps work. But if you've got a little bit of knowledge in Excel and writing Excel formulas, you can bring that across to Power Apps, because it works in a very similar way.
You're giving away my secrets, Tom. Yeah, absolutely. These are simple. And the other thing to remember is there's no cost to any forces to use this. So, Richard, you just wanted to come in as well.
Yeah, just it's always worth remembering, if there's someone from the business that's really excited by some of those solutions, really you need to engage internally as well before you start thinking about downloading the solution. So think about involving your ISO early on in those conversations around, think about DPIAs, think about your business change teams as well. They can really help you deliver and land the solution. And then think about project management as well. So think about your 365 project manager.
Absolutely. And one of the things to do is to go through every single app that's in there and decide whether it's an immediate quick win benefit, something that can fit into a long term, or it's irrelevant. But we ask you each force, just do that. Spend 15-20 minutes, have a look through the solutions catalogue as it stands today, and at least have assessed them and made that decision tree in there. A couple of other questions that have popped in there before we get to the bottom of the hour, and we do finish this. So Nick is asking if there's an access reform for suppliers. No, Nick, unfortunately the community that we're working on is a police only community, so they can share sensitive information. If you're a supplier, there's a contact us form on the website. If you get in touch with us through that, and we do have a supplier engagement process which we can run through and work with that. But this space is specifically designed so forces can share the sensitive information that they need to be able to share to solve some of these problems. But more than willing to talk to suppliers. As you can see, forces have worked and ourselves in partnership with suppliers to put some of these solutions into the solution as we go. And Len's got a question in there. Last one we'll be able to get to. Rich is answering you as we come. But I think many simply tended to look at what is in the catalogue, i.e. the products, and which ones we want to adopt. I think we need to think about how a little bit more and collaborating. You know, we've built the structure for you there, Len, and everybody else. There is a force collaboration channel with 1,500 guests in there. If you've got an idea, got a problem, share it in there. We've seen some fantastic engaging chats going on in that space over the last few weeks. The more and more we can do that, and we will be covering that in tomorrow's event at GMP. So I do hope you're able to join us then. So we are just reviewing the next set of events that are going to be done. They'll be going up onto the website very soon. We're just going through and making sure we've got all the content ready. We're not doing a live webinar next week, but we'll be back hopefully the week after with some fantastic stuff. So do head over to the event section of the website. Remember, you can get in touch with the PDS at any time. Scan the screen, hit the website, click the contact us form. And one of the solutions we'll intend to share in the very near future is a set of Power Automates we've built that helps us manage our contact demand. And this could have implications for things like local policing teams to manage their key individual networks. It could be a range of things that we could do, even press office teams. So there's a lot more. And again, we'll keep pushing the guest and federated or external access as it is. There's some guides on screen there for you. So thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate your time. If you've got any more questions or comments, get in touch with us. We'll pick them up with you, and we look forward to seeing those of you, there's over 130 of you, joining us tomorrow in person for our 365 event in Greater Manchester. So thanks for joining us.